What happens when Melania Trump faces one of the most combative liberal TV hosts on live television? Watch till the end to see how her calm demeanor, sharp wit, and unexpected responses leave everyone, including her opponent, speechless. Melania Trump sat in the sunlit study of her Manhattan penthouse, flipping through the latest reports on her initiative. Outside, the city hummed with life, but inside, she remained focused. Youth mental health had become her passion, a cause she knew needed real attention beyond political noise. Rebecca, her assistant, stepped in with a cautious expression, holding an iPad. "Mrs. Trump, we've received an interview request. Frontline Today wants you on their show, live." Melania barely glanced up. "Who is the host?" Rebecca hesitated. "Mark Reynolds." Melania's lips pressed together. She knew his reputation. Mark was aggressive, loved cornering guests, and had a habit of turning interviews into public spectacles. He'd embarrassed politicians, celebrities, even CEOs. Now he wanted her. "You don't have to do it," Rebecca added. "He's looking for a viral moment. He'll twist your words." Melania took a slow sip of tea, thinking. Then she met Rebecca's gaze. "Good. Let him try." Rebecca sighed. "You're sure?" Melania nodded. "If people attack my cause, I will defend it myself." The decision was made. The battle was set. And neither side knew just how unforgettable this interview would become. News of the upcoming interview spread like wildfire. Major media outlets picked it up within hours, sparking debates across television, radio, and social media. "She's making a huge mistake," one pundit declared on a primetime panel. "Mark Reynolds is a master at dismantling public figures. If she thinks she can sit there and talk about kindness while dodging his questions, she's in for a rude awakening." Another commentator disagreed. "Melania Trump has always been an enigma. People assume she's passive, but she's far more strategic than they realize. This might be a chance for her to set the record straight." Meanwhile, in his glass-walled office overlooking the city, Mark Reynolds sat with his producer, Jason. "This is going to be a knockout," Mark said, smirking as he leaned back in his chair. "She's never faced real pressure before. I'll hit her with contradictions, hypocrisy, all of it. She'll either slip or go silent, and either way, it'll be a headline." Jason, always the cautious one, tapped his pen against his notepad. "She's composed, though. Even under scrutiny, she rarely reacts emotionally. You might not get the meltdown you're hoping for." Mark waved him off. "Everyone cracks under the right pressure." He flipped open his notebook, filled with questions designed to corner Melania. He planned to bring up her husband's tweets, the "I really don't care" jacket, and the supposed contradictions in her initiative. The goal wasn't just to question her, it was to make her squirm. Across town in the Trump penthouse, Melania was preparing in her own way. She didn't believe in over-rehearsing answers. Instead, she focused on her core principles: kindness, clarity, and strength. Rebecca, sitting across from her, was more nervous than she was. "We should practice countering his attacks. What if he says your initiative is hypocritical? Or that your husband's rhetoric contradicts your message?" Melania gave a small, knowing smile. "I tell him the truth. People who do nothing are always loudest in criticizing those who try." Rebecca exhaled. "He'll try to trap you with sound bites." Melania sipped her tea. "Then I will give him sound bites he does not expect." Rebecca shook her head, half in worry, half in admiration. Melania Trump wasn't just walking into the lion's den, she was daring the lion to try its best. The interview was now 2 days away. The world was watching. The day of the interview had arrived. The streets of Manhattan buzzed as Melania Trump's motorcade moved steadily toward the Frontline Today studio. Inside the black SUV, she sat calmly, gazing out at the city. Rebecca, seated beside her, checked her phone obsessively, scanning social media reactions. "People are already speculating about what Mark will ask you," Rebecca said, her voice tight with concern. "They think he's going to trap you on hypocrisy, your husband's policies, and, of course, the jacket." Melania gave a faint smile. "Let them think." Rebecca sighed, stuffing her phone back into her bag. "Just remember, he's aggressive. He won't give you room to breathe." Melania turned to her, her expression unwavering. "Rebecca, I have faced bigger storms than one man with a microphone." The SUV pulled up to the sleek, glass-walled Frontline Today building. Paparazzi swarmed the entrance, cameras flashing like a strobe light show. The world wanted to see Melania Trump's every move. Security ushered her inside, where she was met by Jason, Mark Reynolds' producer. He extended a hand with a forced smile. "Mrs. Trump, welcome. We're honored to have you." "Thank you," she said smoothly, shaking his hand. He led her down a long, bustling hallway filled with crew members, adjusting lighting and audio levels. They passed by a monitor showing the Frontline Today logo alongside the words, "Exclusive. Melania Trump Lev. Will she answer the tough questions?" Rebecca saw it and exhaled sharply. "They're already setting the tone," she muttered. Melania remained unfazed. "Good." Jason guided them into a plush green room. "Mark will be out shortly to greet you," he said before disappearing. Rebecca shifted nervously. "I don't like this. The whole setup feels exactly how they want it to feel," Melania finished for her. "It does not matter. I know who I am." Meanwhile, in his dressing room, Mark adjusted his tie in the mirror, confidence radiating from him. His producer stood nearby, running through last-minute details. "She's composed, but she's not a politician," Jason reminded him. "She doesn't do combative interviews. Push her, and she'll either freeze or snap. Either way, it'll be great TV." Mark smirked. "Don't worry, she won't leave that stage unscathed." With that, he straightened his suit, took a final sip of coffee, and strode toward the set. It was time. The bright lights of the Frontline Today set illuminated the studio as the cameras rolled. Melania Trump sat across from Mark Reynolds, poised, her hands neatly folded in her lap. The air was thick with anticipation, both in the studio and in the homes of millions watching around the world. Mark, sitting with a self-assured grin, adjusted his microphone before turning his full attention to Melania. The stage was set for a battle of words. "Mrs. Trump," Mark began, his tone friendly, but laced with underlying challenge. "Thank you for joining us today. You've been a public figure for years, but this interview, well, it's the first time we've seen you in such a setting. Your work on children's mental health and anti-bullying is commendable, but critics have argued that your husband's rhetoric, especially on social media, undermines those efforts. How do you reconcile those contradictions?" Melania's expression remained calm, composed, as though she'd been asked this question 100 times. "Mark, my work speaks for itself. When you focus on actions, you see results. Words are often misinterpreted, manipulated, or taken out of context." Mark leaned forward, pressing. "But your husband's Twitter feed is infamous for its provocative nature. Many feel it sends the wrong message, especially in light of your anti-bullying initiatives." Melania's gaze did not waver. "You cannot control others' words. What I can control is how I act and how I help. That is why I focus on making a difference." Mark's grin faltered slightly. He wasn't used to such unflappable responses. And yet, some would argue that the "I really don't care" jacket you wore to a migrant facility sent the opposite message. A brief silence followed. The studio's tension deepened. Melania tilted her head slightly, the faintest trace of a smile on her lips. "You know, Mark, the media's obsession with that jacket was fascinating. It's clear that when people do nothing, they find ways to criticize those who are trying to make a real impact." The subtle jab landed with precision. Mark's eyes narrowed, but he quickly regained composure. "Fair enough," he said, still attempting to control the flow of the conversation. "But you have to admit the symbolism of such a statement, especially in that context, was hard to overlook. A lot of people questioned whether it was a strategic message or just careless." Melania looked him directly in the eye, her calm demeanor unwavering. "Sometimes the loudest critics are those who want to distract from the real issues. I don't let distractions determine my path." Mark's face twitched, but he pressed on. "And yet there's another criticism. Your silence during some of the most divisive moments of your husband's presidency. Some say you've chosen not to speak up when it matters most." Melania exhaled slowly, the weight of the question momentarily hanging in the air. She knew this was coming. Mark had been saving this one for the right moment. "What is it you believe, Mark?" she asked softly. He blinked, clearly taken off guard by the unexpected question. "Excuse me?" What do you believe is the best way to affect change in this world? Melania's voice was calm, almost reflective. How do you think we create a better future for children, for families? Mark stumbled for a moment, caught off guard by her shift in tone. It was an opening he hadn't anticipated. It starts with dialogue, listening, understanding. We have to challenge those in power, question their motives. Melania nodded slowly. And that is precisely what I do. My focus is on creating programs, raising awareness, helping those who have been left behind. Actions speak louder than words. For a moment, Mark looked like he might respond, but instead he paused. The truth in her words had deflated his argument, leaving him searching for a way to regain control of the conversation. Mark Reynolds' smile had begun to fade, but he was determined to regain control of the conversation. He shifted in his chair, refocusing. He wasn't used to being caught off guard. You know, Mrs. Trump, Mark began again, his voice slightly sharper now. Many have pointed out that while you focus on kindness and mental health, the divisiveness in the current political climate seems to be something you've remained relatively silent about. Your silence on some of the most controversial issues has left a lot of people wondering whether you really stand for anything beyond your initiatives. Melania's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. It was the only sign of the pressure starting to mount. She had been anticipating a question like this, one aimed at her personal integrity, one designed to expose any cracks in her armor. But Melania Trump was not a woman who buckled under pressure. If anything, it only fueled her determination. Silence, she said calmly, can be a powerful tool when used wisely. My choice to remain focused on my initiatives isn't out of fear or neglect. It's because I know that true change comes from action, not from engaging in every argument that surrounds us. Mark was momentarily thrown. It wasn't the answer he had expected. So, you don't feel compelled to speak out about some of the more divisive moments in your husband's presidency? He pressed, clearly trying to provoke a reaction. I believe in leading by example, Melania replied, her voice smooth and unwavering. I don't need to join every battle to prove my position. My actions speak louder than words. There it was again. The strength of her words, the confidence with which she delivered them. Mark had expected her to stumble, to falter, perhaps even to offer an apology or some form of contrition. Instead, she remained resolute. It was as if she was untouchable. Mark's next question was even more direct. But what do you say to the critics who argue that your initiative has been overshadowed by your husband's controversies? Many people think that your silence in moments that matter is an endorsement of those very controversies. Melania's gaze sharpened. It's easy for people to throw stones when they aren't doing anything to change the situation themselves, she said. Her voice was still calm, but there was a subtle edge to it now. I have faced criticism since day one. People are quick to judge and point fingers, but how many of them are actually doing the work? How many of them are giving their time, their energy, to make a real difference? Mark, momentarily caught off guard, fell silent. The question lingered in the air like a challenge. It was one that demanded an answer, and not just from him, from anyone who had ever criticized her. But instead of offering a retort, Mark hesitated, his thoughts racing. He had been so focused on proving her wrong, so intent on trapping her with contradictions, that he hadn't expected her to turn the conversation around so seamlessly. People are looking for accountability, Mark said, recovering, though the edge in his voice was less sharp now. They want to hear you denounce the divisiveness, the rhetoric. It's not just about what you're doing. It's about standing up against what's wrong. Melania leaned forward slightly, her eyes fixed on him. And I do. Every day, in my own way, by focusing on children, on mental health, on kindness. Change doesn't come from yelling, it comes from doing. If you want to see real change, look at the work that's being done, not the noise. Mark's expression faltered, but he quickly regained his composure. So, you're saying that you don't need to directly confront the divisive rhetoric to make a difference? I'm saying that actions, even quiet ones, speak louder than the noise of the moment. If I spend my energy fighting battles that I cannot change, then I'm not helping anyone. I choose to put my energy into building something positive. Isn't that what we should all be doing? For the first time in the interview, Mark seemed at a loss for words. He had expected Melania to falter, to shrink from the pressure of the moment. But instead, she had taken charge of the conversation and turned it into an indictment of the very premise he had tried to set. As the minutes ticked by, the audience, who had been intently watching the exchange, began to shift in their seats. The interview, which had started with Mark as the aggressor, was now leaning in Melania's favor. Her calm demeanor, coupled with her incisive responses, had shifted the tone of the conversation entirely. Mark knew he needed to regain the upper hand, but he was starting to realize that this was no longer just an interview. It had become a lesson in composure, in strategy, in the quiet power of persistence. The interview had taken an unexpected turn. Mark Reynolds, once confident in his ability to challenge Melania Trump, now found himself at a loss for words. With every question, Melania's calm responses left him scrambling. "You don't feel the need to directly confront the divisiveness surrounding your husband's presidency?" Mark asked, hoping to land a blow. Melania's answer was simple but powerful. "I focus on what I can change. I lead by example, not by arguing every point." The tension in the studio was palpable. Mark had tried to corner her, but Melania's unwavering composure left him struggling to regain control. As the interview came to a close, the clip of their exchange quickly spread across social media. Moments from the interview went viral, with hashtags like #Melania owns Mark trending worldwide. The public was in awe of her calm, measured responses, and many praised her for turning the tables on the interviewer. Even news outlets had to admit that Melania had handled the situation with grace and strength. "Melania Trump shuts down Mark Reynolds in stunning interview," one headline read. By the time the interview ended, it was clear. Melania had not only survived but had come out on top. Her poised, direct answers had left the interviewer and the audience stunned. The viral interview left a lasting mark on Melania Trump's public image. What had begun as a simple interview became a defining moment of poise and strength. Melania's calm, direct responses to tough questions earned her admiration, and the viral clips flooded social media. News outlets praised her composure, and public perception shifted. No longer just the First Lady, she was seen as a leader in her own right, making a difference through her initiatives on children's mental health and anti-bullying. Melania's work gained more visibility as she focused on making real change. Her efforts resonated with people from all walks of life, those who appreciated her quiet strength and unwavering commitment to positive causes. Even her critics had to acknowledge her impact. The interview had opened doors for Melania, but it was her consistent actions and dedication to improving lives that cemented her legacy. After the viral interview, Melania Trump's public image transformed. She was no longer just the First Lady, but a figure of strength and purpose. Her initiatives on children's mental health and anti-bullying gained widespread attention, with people praising her for quietly but powerfully influencing change. Melania focused on her work behind the scenes, quietly shaping the national conversation on mental health. The viral moment had provided her with a platform, but it was her commitment to action that garnered real respect. People began to see her as a leader in her own right, not just as the wife of a controversial president. Though some speculated about a possible political future, Melania remained resolute. "I am not here for the spotlight," she would say. "I'm here for those who need help." Her work, grounded in compassion and dedication, became the cornerstone of her lasting legacy. In the end, it wasn't the headlines that defined her, it was the lives she touched and the change she helped create. Melania had proven that silent strength could lead to powerful transformation.